Hey guys, it is Michelle, and I have finished 3 books, which of course means I have 3 mini book reviews for you. First up, I finished Another Day by David Levithan. This actually doesn't come out until August. It is a companion novel to his novel Every Day. In Every Day, you follow A. A has no body, and he wakes up every day in someone else's body, but he ages kind of like a normal person, and right now he's in his late teens. So he wakes up in Justin's body one day and meets Rhiannon, who is Justin's girlfriend, and he completely falls for her. So for the next few days, instead of just kind of going along with whoever's body he happens to be in, he's trying to use their body to get back to Rhiannon, to check in on her, and eventually starts to try to build a relationship with her. So the story goes from there. Of course, it is bizarre, it is strange, but the writing is so good, and it's such an interesting story. I absolutely loved it. So when I saw Another Day pop up on NetGalley, I'm like, well, what is this? You can't really continue the story. I guess you could, but it doesn't make a whole lot of sense to continue the story. Well, this is the same story, but from Rhiannon's perspective, which of course would be really strange to have this person say that they inhabited the body of your boyfriend for a day and fell in love with you. Yeah, so anyway, I was a little worried because I'm not a rereader, and I was worried this would feel like a reread since I already knew the story. I'm also not big on, like, if I've seen the movie, I'm never going to read the book because I already know how it goes, so I'm just not big when I already know the ending. But it worked out in this case. Now, I did not reread Every Day before Another Day, and that worked out just fine. That made it kind of fun as Rhiannon was discovering things that were happening. I would go, oh yeah, I remember that, and I know these other details that I got when I read from A's perspective. So that was pretty neat. It was also neat to start out reading from her perspective because there was an immediate comfort level there. One, you have David Levithan's smooth, velvety writing, and 2, you have a character you're already familiar with, and so you don't have to like invest in, okay, what's this character like? What's their situation like? You already knew. So that was really cool. It also gave some perspective on her backstory and some of the reasons she made choices she did, which was nice. And also gave her perspective on kind of what kind of person A is because he's in this weird circumstance. So I really enjoyed it. You'll have to pardon my cats. They're playing right now. And I would recommend it to people who've read Every Day and maybe even people who haven't. And it's going to stand up. It matched perfectly to my memory of Every Day. So even if you've just reread Every Day, it's going to work out just fine. Now, if you're only going to read one of them, I would choose Every Day just because his is the more unique perspective of the two. But if you enjoyed Every Day, you will like Another Day. And it is just heaven and wonderful. I gave it 4 stars on Goodreads. The second book that I read in this grouping was We Need New Names by No Violet Bulawayo. This was to fulfill part of the 2015 Read Harder Challenge from Book Riot, and it was the category Read a Book by an Author from Africa. So this story follows Darling, and she's probably 9 or 10 at the beginning of the book, and there's no school, so she and her friends from the village just kind of run wherever they please. The parents don't really have time or energy to keep up with them, and they're always hungry, so they run to nearby villages, and they feel like they're stealing fruit from trees in people's yards and that kind of thing, when really it's not a wanted fruit. It's not a fruit most people would eat unless it was like a last resort. But they witness all kinds of things. You know, they argue at times, they help each other at times, they witness things that are good, things that are bad. It's just your typical kind of growing up story. Then about halfway through, she has a chance to move to the United States with her aunt. And she finds out that things are not the way she thought they would be in the United States. And the story just kind of starts to have issues for me starting there. The things that you see, the events you're privy to through Darling's eyes when it starts to be in the United States are just real jerky and kind of incoherent, and I didn't enjoy that at all. I thought there were things included both in the Zimbabwe section and in the United States section that were just like shock value and not really necessary for the story. This just really wasn't my cup of tea. Her writing style didn't appeal to me. I wasn't invested in any of the characters, and that is so strange for me. Darling was just kind of this lens that you saw all these events through, but she really didn't give any opinions or dreams or hopes or wishes. So it was hard to like be cheering for her on her side. Not that you want anything bad to happen to her, but you didn't really know what she wanted to know kind of what to cheer for her. And the side characters just kind of fell kind of flat, and I didn't really care about them either. So it was probably a good way to get across the point that unless you're living somewhere right now, you may think you know what conditions are like, but there's really no way to truly know what they're like. And you see this through Darling's eyes. She, of course, knows what Zimbabwe life is like, but she thinks she knows what U.S. life is like. She gets there, she finds out she doesn't. And then after a few years talking on the phone with her friends back home in Zimbabwe, she realizes she doesn't really know what life is like in Zimbabwe anymore either, and there's this real disconnect between them. Another thing I thought it did a good job of was pointing out that regardless of where you live, there are sources of joy, there are sources of sorrow, there are sources of fear, and it really doesn't matter if you live in kind of a third world nation or a first world nation, you're going to see that because everything's kind of relative to you. So I did enjoy that aspect of it. All in all, I gave it 2 stars because I just could not bring myself to mark 3 stars. It says I like it because I didn't. So, oh well, you win some, you lose some. All right, and the third book that I read in this grouping was Shipwrecks by Akira Yoshimura, and I had to order a physical copy of this. It is not available on the Kindle, and I couldn't get it any other way, and it finally came. And since it is set in medieval Japan, which is what really got me interested in it, I'm like, medieval Japan? These two things just don't go together for me. So I wanted to see what that was all about. When I heard about Japanese June, I'm like, perfect. Gives me an excuse to read this since I just got it. It is set a long time ago in Japan on the coast in a little tiny fishing village. And these people are not very prosperous. They, of course, get some sustenance from the sea, but they can't really grow vegetables or grain because the wind and the storms and the salt from the sea would tear up any plants. So they have to trade, and what they have to trade is sometimes leftover seafood, but more often than not, it's salt. They take salt water and they distill it and, get it down to the salt, and they take it inland to trade there for grain and that kind of thing. Occasionally, they will use the fires. They try to use it all the time, but occasionally in the winter, some ships will have trouble in the rough seas, and they'll be heavy with cargo. They will see the fires on the shore from the salt making process, and they will think it's houses, and they will come in thinking they have found safety when really there is a rocky reef there, and it's going to tear the ship up and strand the ship. They're in a desperate situation, and so they do some pretty desperate things, some pretty unfriendly things to get their hands on that cargo, but it's a matter of life and death to them. But karma has a way of coming back to get you, and that's what they learn in this book. I truly adored this story. I was so invested in Usaku's story, and he's a 9-year-old boy in the beginning of the book, and all this stuff happens to the village and the family, and it is just desperate. And yeah, I really enjoyed this. I will say it is a slow read. Not a whole lot is happening. I think I was 70 pages in before anything truly happened. It is only 180 pages, but the typography is kind of small, and it's not double spaced or anything, so it was a denser read than I thought. Regardless of that, I devoured this in less than 24 hours because I had to know what happened. So I ended up giving it 4 stars on Goodreads and really enjoyed it. So that is what I read. Please comment below if you have anything to say about them, or if you've read them, or if you're now planning to read them, or whatever. Thank you so much for watching, and happy reading.